Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. This week, we're joined by B. Griffin, Farmers Market Support Program Manager for Community Farm Alliance, about food access at the farmers market and the new electronic farmers market nutrition program that was recently rolled out in Kentucky. Hey everyone, I'm one of your hosts, Bridget Myers. I'm a longtime farmers market manager and education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields-White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active farmers market manager and consultant, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, and the Farmers Market Pros community.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer, marketing director for Farmers Market Pros, and logistics coordinator for Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, coming right up.
Right up.
Get your tickets now, folks.
That's right.
See you in March.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by the National Farmers Market Coalition, giving farmers markets a voice in public policy and strengthening farmers markets for the benefit of farmers, consumers, and communities. Find more information at farmersmarketcoalition.org or by clicking their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk. Today, our guest is B. Griffin, the Farmers Market Support Program Manager at Community Farm Alliance, a nonprofit serving markets throughout Kentucky. At CFA, B leads the Market Manager Cost Share Program and Farmers Market Resiliency Program, which aim to support the longevity and success of Kentucky farmers markets. B is thrilled to hold a position at CFA that allows her to give back to Kentucky communities while supporting farmers and increasing access to fresh, local food for all. Love that. Welcome to Tent Talk, B.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
We're so excited to talk to you about this program. I know we've all been talking about it a lot, so excited to get to know more and have our listeners kind of learn about it. Do you want to just start off by telling us a little bit about your personal, professional background and what led you to Community Farm Alliance?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kentucky, born and raised, and we lived on a small tobacco and cattle farm where my dad was the farm hand. And in addition to their day jobs and my dad farming with tobacco and cattle, we all, my family are subsistent farmers. So if we didn't grow, we really didn't eat it as a kid. I have really fond memories of digging potatoes and lifting corn stalks after rainstorms as a kid.
But fond? Yeah. Are we sure they're fond?
Fond memories.
Fond now that I don't have to do that.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, and so I think I like to think that I always had a connection to the land and where my food came from. But I took that with me to Berea College, which is a small private school in Berea, Kentucky. If listeners have never heard of Berea College, it's in Kentucky. You should look it up because it's a really magical place. But I studied peace and social justice studies, but Berea is a work study college. So my other passions got to be expanded in the student labor program, where I worked as an ecological resident in the Eco Village. So there I got to lead the Eco Village gardens and then host workshops about growing food, growing pumpkins with kids. That's probably my favorite lesson that I always bring up because they were like, whoa, a pumpkin comes from a flower? Oh, and so I always have fond memories of that too. So in 2020, I was still at Berea and COVID hit. So we went virtual and I found myself back in the Campton, Kentucky area. So home, and I helped my two friends found the Red River Gorge Farmers Market. So I helped them be established in their first year, still going strong and steady there. But then I graduated in 2021. I was doing odd and end jobs, managing companies that didn't really align with my values at all. And then CFA had a few positions open up, and I actually applied for all three. Because that's who I am. And lo and behold, I didn't get accepted for the first two positions. And then the Farmers Market Support Program Manager position came up, and I said, "Hey, Martin, I know you've seen this resume before, but I actually updated it. Give it a second go." And here I am, very, very grateful to be in this position and just super honored and excited, truly.
Awesome. So it sounds like you are a great fit for this role, definitely coming from your farm background.
And Berea does sound magical.
Yes, now I want to go there.
I want to go to the Eco Village.
We're doing a field trip to Berea.
All right.
Well, at our last Intense conference, we had some representatives from Community Farm Alliance present, and they gave us some background info about CFA. But for our listeners who weren't there, could you briefly just give us a rundown of what your organization does and its relationship to farmers markets?
Right. Yeah. So Community Farm Alliance is a nonprofit in Kentucky. We work with small-scale family farmers, policymakers, and farmers markets, all trying to support access to fresh local food across the state. Truly, we have so many programs in our hands and so many pots that if it has to do with supporting the small-scale family farm, we've likely had our hands in it. Yeah, that's what we do. Farm to School, Farmers Market Support Program, equity work with farmers of color, anything and everything that has to do with farming in the state of Kentucky, we're in it.
Awesome. And then what is your role at CFA? What does your day-to-day look like there?
Yeah, day-to-day, it's never cookie cutter, which is why I really love my job. So I like we mentioned earlier, I run and lead the Market Manager Cost Share Program. So that's a one-to-one matching grant that supports market managers' salaries across the state. And then we also just started the Farmers Market Resiliency Program this year. So we're wrapping that up. But what that program looked like this year was we had 5 markets across the state who applied for the program. We hand selected them based on a pretty rigorous scoring guide of need. And then we did another needs assessment with them that was 2 hours long, very in depth. And then we partnered with other organizations across the state that work with farmers and markets to provide trainings for them, for each group of leadership in their market, and not even leadership, because vendors too. So we had trainings for vendors, market managers, and board members for each of those 5 markets. And so we're wrapping that up. But then day to day, it looks a little bit different because we also provide technical support to markets across the state. And so that's anything from I have a conflict with my market manager as a board member coming to me. Or let me re-say that. A board member coming to me saying, I have a conflict with my market manager, B, can you help me? To implementing incentive programs, to, hey, I don't know how to do this reporting. Can you please help me? Any and everything, they come to us. We try to help them.
Cool. That's awesome. I wish we had something like that in our
in
we
our
have
state.
CAT. We have ourselves.
Yeah, we have ourselves.
But that sounds like a great resource, especially for these smaller rural areas or for first-time farmers market managers or markets that just are on a shoestring budget that don't have enough support.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. What's the average size market that you work with, B?
Yeah, they vary. So we have some with about 5 to 10 vendors. We have others that have 40, 50 plus vendors. So it really just depends on the location of the market.
And is your DEI program been pretty successful? Are you seeing markets diversify, seeing farmers of color at the markets?
I want to say yes, but it's unclear currently. I think we're trying.
Gotcha. Yeah, we've got a session coming up at our next conference, actually, because there's so many people, well-intentioned, trying really hard that seem stuck on a few things. So we're gonna tackle that at the conference. So I was just curious how it was going there.
Yeah, I'd love to figure out what's said at the conference because we're definitely a little bit stuck. But we have good intentions and we have the desire, and I think that's the part.
Have you worked with the Anti-Racist Toolkit at all from Farmers Market Coalition?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. So the lead consultant on that will be leading the session at Intense. So Sadrina Jalal will be back, and hopefully we'll make some progress on those things. I know a lot of folks made some progress and then kind of got stuck and could use some Q&A and a little bit of a nudge.
Yeah, we started diving into the anti-racist toolkit, and then flooding happened. And so that kind of fullest energy. So we're excited to get back into it. We actually just had a strategic planning meeting this past week.
Cool. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Ooh, so much going on. That's why those T-shirts say our job is weird. It's from one thing to another. So after New Mexico did a pilot program with the modernization grants for the Farmers Market Nutrition Program benefit delivery, and that's a big mouthful of words. And what that means is that FMNP, some of the EBT and SNAP funds, WIC checks, a lot of things are shifting over to electronic redemption. We're going to let B talk a little bit about that and explain it a little bit better. So as opposed to handing out tokens or script at the market info booth, those systems are trying to set up where you just use your card at the individual farmer and vendor. Not all farmers and vendors are ready for that. Rural markets are seeing some challenges in terms of internet access. So there's some pros to it, I'm quite sure, and from many market managers we're hearing that there's some cons to it and some challenges. So this last summer, USDA Food and Nutrition Service awarded Kentucky a grant, and it fast-tracked electronic processing of FMNP benefits, which I believe I've heard kind of through the grapevine came as a bit of a surprise of how much they fast-tracked it. So, B, can you tell us a little bit about this and what it means for Kentucky to have been the first state where it's fully implemented, how that rolled out, what it's been feeling like?
Yeah, you said it best when it came as a surprise. A bit of background as far as WIC and senior goes in Kentucky. We've had FMNP for senior and WIC for about 10 years, and our senior redemption rates are pretty high. We have seniors who can. So I assume that is the reason why those senior redemption rates are high. But yeah, so this past year we implemented digital FMNP, and what that really looked like in the state of Kentucky was a lot of delayed starts and an incredible amount of stress. So the haste of the implementation came from the financial institution that was printing the vouchers no longer maintaining their contract. The contract ended, and it wasn't financially feasible for them to continue printing these vouchers. So lo and behold, we moved to a digital platform called Solely Market. That platform wasn't released until April, but let me backtrack myself and say that it wasn't released that we were going digital until February of this year. So, of course, that's really late. Yay. And minimal time for training. And it was honestly a chaotic, frantic mess, to put it nicely, I think. So yeah.
I think that's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. In Kentucky, we have the Kentucky Department of Ag, who runs the senior FMNP, and then we have the Kentucky Department of Health that runs the WIC FMNP. And so senior FMNP, Kentucky Department of Ag, decided that they would move to digital benefits, and then the Kentucky Department of Health decided to follow. And so that happened. We received minimal training in April, along with market managers, the distribution agents that would be the ones who were in charge of distributing the cards that we were moving to. And most of those distribution agents were only the senior distribution agents, not the WIC distribution agents. The WIC distribution agents really got trained maybe a week before the program released. And so that was also a hiccup. The program was said that it was going to start July 1st. I think less than a week before the program was supposed to start, we were notified that, hey, it's actually not going to start. It'll start June 1st. Well, come June 1st, a lot of markets and farmers still hadn't received their access codes to log into the app. And then I was actually at a market the Friday or the Thursday before it was supposed to start, and the market manager was getting access codes at that Thursday market. And so the time to even get acquainted with this new app and this new platform, it just wasn't there. And then the communication between the Kentucky Department of Ag and the Kentucky Department of Public Health and CFA was just minimal. There's a little bit of a strifed relationship there, even though we really try to maintain it well. That's just how it is. And so, yeah, it was a pretty big mess, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I can imagine having two different agencies probably doesn't help. I mean, we've seen how well public agencies sometimes play together, not always nicely. And then I'm sure anytime you have two agencies like that, each one is going to say that's the other one that's causing the problem. That's in my experience. I mean, I could be unique in that, but that often happens. And then they were getting access codes right at the market. Now, does this system mean that each farmer and vendor has to swipe their own stuff, or are you still swiping at the booth a card and then giving people tokens? Or actually, that doesn't really happen in WIC, does it? They get their own checks and senior.
Yeah, and so it's not through the market manager. It's farmer, vendor to customer. So each farmer is required to have a device that allows them to have this app. So that was a really big hiccup, especially for our rural markets. I received a phone call from one of my market managers that said, "Hey, B, my farmers don't have smartphones. Some of them don't even have flip phones. They don't want one." I'm like,
they don't want one.
Right.
I don't want one.
I also don't want one.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, me either. And so that was one of our huge barriers. But then another barrier is that you have to have internet access. And so, of course, we don't have internet access statewide. Actually, my mother lives in an area that doesn't have internet access. She doesn't have internet at her house. I don't have internet at my house. So, to have a market that needs internet is a whole different story when you even have general people who don't have internet.
Since this is a farmers market podcast, we won't go into the ridiculousness that all of America doesn't have internet access. We'll get back to that on a different podcast. We'll be calling, what's your podcast, America or something. But that is a problem. And it's not just in Kentucky. We're hearing the same things from small farmers markets in California. Up in the north area where we meet Oregon, there's swaths of area where there's no internet access. And so this whole concept, how did nobody think of that before they plunged into this? It's really amazing. So what was the end result? These guys don't have internet access. They have to take this electronically. Were the customers just out in the cold there?
Yeah. A lot of farmer vendors did not participate in the programs this year. A lot of markets didn't participate in the programs this year just because they couldn't. They didn't have access to the technology that they needed or to the internet that they needed, because there also simultaneously were no funds available to get said technology should the farmer even be willing or interested in doing it in most cases.
That's just crazy. And if memory serves me, wasn't that about the time there was no baby formula, right, in stores? So I'm just thinking about people getting WIC and them just really being roadblocked at every portal.
Yeah, that is a huge, not only a huge bummer for people that are needing food access, but also just a gigantic missed opportunity for this program.
Right. Yeah, it would have been a great time to get new WIC shoppers, actually, with all that going on with the formula and stuff. But, but if they're stumbling at the same time. Has there been any kind of a resolution?
I want to say yes and no. As far as tech access and internet access, no. We are actually meeting with Solely Market tomorrow. And so hopefully CFA and Solely Market can develop a relationship to try to solve some of these issues. But like you said, Kat, internet access is a much larger issue than a farmer's market issue. And so I'm not sure that there's a solution to that unless we can come up with an offline version that kind of like Square, how they can process payments offline. And then when they're connected, you can actually process it. If we can figure out a way to do that.
So you'd be transporting things from your rural markets back to some area that does have internet and downloading all of those transactions. Are they prohibiting you from doing anything physical as far as taking a physical check or doing tokens or any of those things? Is it this is the way it is now and you can't circumvent that with the physical system?
I would like to be creative and circumvent it, but it still has to go through that solely market system.
Gotcha. So this is just a ton more work. If you can get it to work at all, if you can serve the customers at all, it's just a ton more work for really small farmers and farmers market managers. And thank goodness for CFA.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. I feel really grateful for our market manager cost share program. That's some feedback that we got on a lot of our reports was like, hey, if we didn't have a market manager, we would not have been able to implement these programs whatsoever.
Right, because a lot of small markets are like volunteer run. I talk about your head exploding without even a salary.
How does that market manager cost share program work?
Yeah, so it's a one-to-one matching grant. And so CFA will provide up to $2,000 for the market. They apply, we approve it based on their capacity and how long they've been in the program, if they're participating in incentive programs, et cetera. And then the market provides the match. So up to $4,000 could be provided for the market manager's salary.
So if they come up with something to pay a manager, then CFA will match that.
Awesome.
Which is good because in a lot of those areas, especially the rural areas, those managers aren't getting paid at all.
Yeah.
And so if they can come up with something, I mean, $4,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but, you know, if it's a seasonal market and it's a smaller market and it's just one day a week, it's something that keeps them on point and that at least has somebody that's getting some training and things that can deal with this kind of craziness.
Yeah. I have a question regarding the Electronic Farmers Market and Nutrition Program. This came through from the USDA. So is their intention to eventually roll out this program nationwide? And if so, how are these lessons from Kentucky being learned and addressed? And is there any sort of solution that's going to be put in place as this program moves forward?
What are you hearing, Bee?
You're the boots on the ground
Big
over
question
there.
Yeah. I don't necessarily know that I have all the answers, but as of right now, there is actually no federal mandate that these programs go digital. But we are seeing it roll out slowly across the country. And that I think that's primarily because of the financial institution that was printing the paper vouchers is no longer printing the paper vouchers.
Can't we just get a new
I mean, I feel like Next Day Flyers could resolve this.
Yes. I know a guy.
We've got a guy.
I have a printer. He's great. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it seems silly that is the conundrum here. It's like you just can't print it. But apparently it's not financially feasible. I know that New Mexico and Kentucky used the same contractor for the vouchers. And so that's why we are both shifting at similar times. New Mexico did have a much greater transition period and pilot program with one or two markets. So they actually thought before they moved forward, like Kentucky. And so, yeah, to answer your other questions about how the lessons learned in Kentucky can help other markets, we have talked to, let me see if I can get all of the states correct. We've talked to New Mexico, thanks to Denise. Shout out to her. She actually let us sit in on their trainings early on in the year. We're meeting with Oregon tomorrow, Iowa in the coming weeks, and we've also chatted with Colorado so far. So a lot of states, thanks to FMC's leader call, know that Kentucky has been through this process and we are connected with them. So we've just been we have been chatting it up about, I think we're the example of what not to do, which is unfortunate. We might be negative Nancy's about this, and I'm sorry.
Well, and CFA can be an example of what to do and how to, react in the best way that they can to support the farmers. I mean, it's a bummer that you kind of got served a crappy situation and you're having to address it, but thank goodness it's something that you've experienced and CFA can pass that on to
And there
other
is that
markets.
central organization. So there are some states that don't have a dynamic farmers market association or an organization like CFA, and they would be in an even worse spot, if this just fell onto individual market managers. This didn't have a dialogue going. I mean, I want to shout out to what Bea just mentioned, that Farmers Market Coalition organizes, and I actually help facilitate. So,
Shout out
just
to
to
you.
be, shout out to me, or full disclosure. But so we have a monthly call for farmers market leaders, typically state association directors and those kind of folks, or people that are working at the state level or at the national level with policymakers. And oftentimes there's Farmers Market Coalition staff on there. We usually get a policy update from their executive director, and then we hear about things that they're hearing, because sometimes their technical side hears about things before individual state leaders do, or certainly before individual market managers do. So that call has been tremendously helpful. It has existed for many, many years, but it got to be very active during COVID. We were actually doing it twice a month because obviously we were in that situation where nobody knew what the heck we were supposed to do to react to this, and it really helped to have a brain trust and to have a hive that could, this is working for us, or this is what our state says, or what if you count people in and out. So there was a lot of resolution to a lot of challenges there, and now that group is so solid that we're still meeting once a month, and we're able to address things like this. So you can reach out and say, "Hey, Rosalind in Colorado, what are you doing to deal with this?" Because I know she's also very concerned about the way they're rolling it out there. Again, lots of rural areas. By definition, when you talk about farmers markets, you're oftentimes talking about people that are rural. It's farmers. So, and a lot of those folks don't want to run their own tech. They like the fact that the bank issues the checks, they deposit them. The farmers market manager gives tokens or script, and it's handled. So this is a big challenge. It's crazy.
So frustrating that these food access programs are for people that are already having issues getting fresh food, and especially the senior group doesn't want to deal with this technology probably, and farmers too tend to generally that's not their bag, and so it seems like all of these things are falling on already underserved communities that may already have a predisposition to not have a lot of resources for technology or have a lot of experience, or just it's like, why did they choose this for this program?
Forcing these customers to kind of go to like central grocery stores where the food's not going to be as nutritious. It's not supporting the local community. I mean, was this program like funded by big ag and just want everybody to get to the grocery store and to eliminate that
Wally
whole
World? Can we say that? We won't use the name, but we know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is there a big
feels like they
grocery lobby that's doing this purposely? You have to, conspiracy theories. Just because you think they're after, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you.
Sponsored by General Mills.
Yeah,
that's right.
It does feel like they piloted this program and just set everybody up for failure. I mean, it just feels like, let's set this up at a bunch of rural Kentucky farmers markets.
Or New Mexico, same thing. You get a big stretches of rural area there.
Yeah, it just doesn't
and honestly,
make much sense.
I mean, we're going to try to tamp down on the conspiracy idea. I don't think that the ag and health departments are doing this on purpose. I think they're just not familiar enough.
Yeah.
They're doing what they do in their offices, and they just are not aware. And the sad part is that they didn't bother to become aware, that they didn't reach out and say, how do you think a farmer's going to react to this?
Or had they not been to a farmer's market?
Yeah, and they're like, what's the problem? Just run the batch at the end, hook up to the internet. I don't know. It just feels like it wasn't thought out too hard. And what the hard thing is that they're forced into this digital process. It wasn't like, hey, do you want to stay with your printed coupons, or do you want you're familiar with your market. You choose what you think would be best, which would give the most people the most food access. And then let those market managers kind of decide what's the program that will best serve our underserved communities that need this food access.
And as Bea says, this all stems from somebody decided not to print something.
Yeah.
This is mind-blowing.
So all circles back. Can we get sponsored by Xerox and get some printing done?
Yeah.
Boy.
This is very similar to the dialogues that we had roll out. We were all just kind of bamboozled about it and felt a little befuddled. But I do want to highlight that we did have some very successful and ingenuitive market managers in Kentucky, of course. And so, we had a market manager who was like, you know what, if this is what we're handed, well, this is what we're going to do. And luckily, they already had a market that had access to internet. And so she also had access to a pot of volunteers. And she put those younger volunteers who were tech savvy with her farmers and said, okay, you're going to learn it, or this volunteer is going to do it for you. And so that is just the epitome of, okay, we're going to figure it out. And we did. We had another market manager at a smaller market that had like 8 vendors or so be like, well, I'm just going to run it. And so she would log on to each individual farmer's account and do it for them and hop around booth to booth. And so, there were areas where we did make it work, not with ease. But I definitely do want to shout out to all of Kentucky's market managers
because market managers are amazing. I know none of us wanted to hear the word pivot or resiliency again, but they just are. Market managers pivot, and they are resilient, and they're creative. And if anybody's going to figure this out, market managers will. But why make it so hard on them?
And it's not a sustainable solution, because then you have to count on every market manager being able to have time to do that or the skill set to do that. Or just every situation
keep customers
in a market.
Waiting.
Exactly. So but that is fantastic, and that doesn't surprise me at all that the managers just stepped in and kind of made it happen. But it's too bad that there's not a more sustainable solution right now. Hopefully that's coming.
Yeah.
And I think advocacy is that's kind of our theme with our upcoming conferences next year is advocacy and claiming our seat at the table. And I think the idea that all of us nationally can work together to kind of get the message across to these agencies that slow it down. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what the challenges are and what the solutions are before we roll it out and affect the customers
or consult
and the farmers.
us.
Ask
us what our jobs are
us
like
a call.
And the needs that we have. And if you're really advocating on the behalf of farmers, then hook them up with a solution that fits within their lifestyle.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're going to hope that things get better on that side. We're all going to work to make things better.
Yeah.
So when your head was not exploding over electronic FMNP things, you had some other interesting things going on, right?
Yeah, so on the theme of resiliency, in addition to all of the challenges that Kentucky farmers markets and farmers have been facing with their new electronic farmers market nutrition program, a few months ago, heavy rains combined with a drought led to flash flooding in eastern Kentucky. And those of you listening probably remember when that was in the headlines. And so I was just wondering if you could give us a snapshot of how that impacted farms and farmers market communities in your area.
Yeah. Snapshot's a little bit hard just because it is still so catastrophic. Lives, homes, farms destroyed, lost. And it is hard to simplify it down to farmers and farmers markets, but there were 4 counties who were hit the hardest, and those would be Breathitt, Letcher, Knott, and Perry. And so each of the areas were hit a little bit differently, and so the markets and the farms look a little bit different. Specifically in Letcher County, they, at their market, the Whitesburg City Market, they just X'd out all local produce. So they completely pivoted their rule because they typically would not allow resale, and they did only resale suddenly, just out of the health concern of flood-watered gardens. And so Yeah, other markets, they really relied heavily on donated produce. Some markets were a mix of local produce of farmers, gardens who didn't get hit, and others who did that were doing resale. But many farmers also lost their homes, they lost their gardens, they lost all of their infrastructure, their barns, their equipment. And so, yeah, we're definitely still recovering. We will be for a really long time. But the communities have definitely stood up and taken care of one another in unthinkable ways, as mountain people do. So,
yeah. Well, we are, our heart goes out to everyone in Kentucky, and especially the farmers and the farmers market communities that have been impacted. I remember when CFA spoke at our conference last year, hearing about these awesome groups of people that are, growing in their own like small gardens, and just seems like such a vibrant, helpful, neighborly place. So we are rooting for you. And I know that CFA has been doing a lot of work. Obviously, you have relationships with these farmers, you have relationships with these farmers market managers, but also kind of more on an organizational level. You have some like disaster relief resources. So what are some of the programs that CFA is running to help the flooding that's happened?
Yeah, so to meet the immediate need of the farmers and farmers markets, we helped with the set of free markets that happened in Breathitt, Knott, Letcher, and Perry counties. Big shout out to the World Central Kitchen and the Lee Initiative, among many other partners that made that happen. And so these were funds that were made available to farmers, and it gave them the ability to purchase resale food and then or give away the food that they had grown. So customers received produce at no cost, but farmers were still getting an income. And so we did, I want to say it was 8 weeks of free markets, but honestly, time is a blur. And to be at 4 different counties of free markets, it's a little bit foggy. But we've wrapped those up, and we supported like 180 plus customers at some of those markets. And honestly, it was beautiful to just see and witness and be a part of and to help facilitate, because people still needed food and they did not have it. So yeah, it was just, I'm honestly speechless about the free markets still.
Yeah, the free markets, I've seen there's an organization in Philadelphia that does an amazing job of food recovery. And one of the things that they do with the food that they recover from major distributors and things is they hold free markets. And it's a whole concept that's a little different from what we've always talked about to, make farmers financially sustainable. But it does, a couple of things. It gets food, obviously, to truly hungry people that need that food. It also does that in an environment that has some of the advantages of farmers markets that run in a capitalist way, meaning that they're still building relationships with the people that are providing food, and they're getting in the habit of going out and seeing their neighbors and buying on a hyper-local level, not buying, but just receiving food on a hyper-local level and getting to shop for it. So the dignity of getting free food, it feels different than, going to a food bank and picking up a box that somebody else has curated for you. Being able to shop from booth to booth and pick up free food is such a different experience. And I think, too, we're building the habit in people so that when they are a little bit more on their feet and they're up and at them more, they're going to remember that that's the place to shop, and that be aware of what a community system farmers markets are. So the whole free market thing is really amazing. And thank you for mentioning World Central Kitchen and Lee Initiative. Those groups have both done so well. It was interesting to hear you say that Whitesburg had shifted to a resale market, because that makes sense. I don't know what we would do in California since our laws prohibit that. I'm hoping that they would have some kind of an emergency change in the regulations here if we were facing that kind of thing. But, that is the brilliant way to keep distributing food to people who need it, and also, prop up those farmers.
Yeah, and this kind of leads to wrap things up. But I just want to first thanks Kentucky for, really being on the front line of all of these issues that the rest of the country at some point is going to experience in some capacity. So it sounds like you are developing this wealth of knowledge that we're all going to have to draw on eventually when something happens somewhere else. So, but, as climate change continues to impact our local ag and farmers market communities on a greater scale, do you have any thoughts about how we can prepare and respond to these natural disasters, or how we could bake them into our policy, like in case of emergency, removing the reseller restrictions, or as an example? But do you have any other thoughts on that?
I do. However, first I want to shout out a few other things that CFA has done in regards to flood relief. We, in partnership with the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky, distributed $354,000 across 94 different farms in 10 of the impacted counties. And so that was through the Central Appalachian Family Farm Fund that we reopened when the flooding hit. And we are now in partnership with many different organizations developing an Eastern Kentucky Canning Coalition. And so that is kind of in the aftermath of the free markets. A lot of folks lost their home gardens. And so typically they would be preserving food to get them through the winter. And now they don't have that food to get them through the winter. And so we are collecting bulk produce and canning goods and creating canneries in Eastern Kentucky so that can still be done. A couple other of our huge projects. So just wanted to give some good shout outs to those folks.
That's amazing work.
But yeah, to thoughts about how we can prepare for natural disasters. I think that first I want to say that I'm in no way an expert, but it is safe to say that in the past 3 years, Kentucky has learned a lot about disaster response. I mean, we've experienced 200-year floods and record-breaking tornadoes. And what it's really taught us is that we need to have a disaster plan so that we're not frantic when it happens. We can be surface level frantic, but at least we know that this is our process. This is what we need to do because we need to get to work immediately because people need help immediately. I think in this past round of disaster relief, we were scrambling for a little bit, and then we were okay, this is what we need to do. And so to remove that scramble, to just go ahead and know that it's going to happen, which feels a little bit pessimistic, but here we are, and to go ahead and have a plan in place. So yeah, removing resale rules and being ready to pivot. And to honestly, I think that what we've learned more than anything is that we're more resilient when we work together. The farmer to farmer mutual aid that happened with these free markets and with the bulk produce, to see how many central Kentucky markets donated food to Eastern Kentucky markets, it was just incredible. And so, yeah, I think we're going to have to continue to watch, adapt, and learn as the climate changes because that's inevitable.
Well, this was a little bit more serious
episode.
We're
having a flood here. In
but it's amazing, though, what market people can do and what farmers can do. And when you say you're no expert, the fact is mutual aid sometimes is just so much more effective than the quote-unquote experts and what they provide.
Yeah, because look at the SNAP processing
they
gave us.
Right. Let's avoid the experts. And,
we'll do it ourselves.
Experts are out.
Count on the people that are working face-to-face and helping each other. And I think, your thought that we're better together, really that's the takeaway here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bea, thank you so much for being with us. Is there anything we didn't ask you that we should have?
I don't think so. I think we really covered it.
We covered a lot.
Yeah, we covered a lot. I'm feeling really good about the work that we're doing. So thank you all for...
As you certainly should. You guys are doing amazing things. I am so impressed with CFA and with you and what you're accomplishing. Kentucky is not the largest, richest state, and you guys are doing amazing work there. Shout out.
Thank
to CFA and B and Kentucky.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, I'm proud of everyone at CFA. So we're good staff.
Yeah, good team.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for being with us, B.
Bye. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Farmers Market Coalition for supporting farmers, market operators, and communities, and for their support of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. The coalition brings farmers market leaders together, and there's strength in numbers. Find more information on FMC membership by clicking their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Farmers markets are all about connection, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. Connect with people just like you from various parts of the country and share what's happening in your area in the terrific conversations over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. If you're actively involved in a farmers market, please find us there, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join the group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. If you're looking for further education, check out our online course offerings at farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you access your podcasts, and tell us and others how you're enjoying Tent Talk. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll have another great episode next week, so tune in.